Ideation has become less an act of exploration and more a matter of checking boxes, and as a result, the very methods meant to inspire end up killing creativity. So what might it look like to move beyond checking boxes? What changes if we start with the sensory, perceptual and emotional aspects of an experience? That's the orientation of today's conversation. My guest, Anne Marleen Olthof, is a UX educator and PhD candidate at the universities of Antwerp and Amsterdam. Her work challenges us to imagine design that is centered not only on thinking, but also on the physical, lived experience between users and technology. Anne Marleen Olthof, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Could you start by explaining what Somaesthetic means and how it compares with regular UX?
Yes, I have been thinking about this question. You can consider it to be an alternative approach, which is currently emerging in the field of human-computer interaction. And it's about working with the human body in relationship to the world. And it tries to understand and comprehend the human experience from the body from within. In human-computer interaction, it has been popular since the last 10 years, I think. Richard Schusterman was already working with it 25 years ago, but mainly Christina Hoek and Tekla Schiphorst and Lian Loki have really established the work of Somaesthetics in the field of human-computer interaction by writing books about the Soma experience. How it compares to regular UX is that it's probably evolving towards the field of UX. But in general, if we look at the UX as it is existent right now, we see that also in the field of user experience in UX, there is already a shift towards working with the hands, the eyes, brain cognitive processes that are already capable of influencing the interaction that we have with technology. The difference probably is with Somaesthetics is that it starts from that body from within, which is a very disturbed, difficult, complex place, ambiguous. So we are still trying to figure out what is actually the way to talk about it, to work with it. So in that sense, for regular UX, which is very process-based, it's a very new and different way of thinking. So when technology becomes more smart or intelligent or pretends to be intelligent, it can also become more closer to who we are as a person. So therefore, this idea of Somaesthetics really brings this whole development back to the body and tries to figure out how to design for that specific balance in the human body in such a way that it's not becoming overwhelmed through all of the technology that we are facing today.
Do you see specific users or user behaviors that benefit from a Somaesthetic design experience?
Yes, I think it can be, of course, important for the whole human experience. So that means everybody is part of that. Yet, if we look at the current user groups that I also like to work with, they are people who are a little bit have some specific characteristics, and then we can say it's inclusive design or integrated perspective. I don't really like to work with those terminologies. But in general, the user groups that can be helped are people that suffer from anxiety, people that have different body types than the mainstream body type that we are designing for right now. We are always thinking about, we have fingers, we have hands, we have arms, we have 2 legs, we don't have learning difficulties. But there are many people, even when they don't show it to the world, they have also challenges. Especially in the world where digital technology is becoming so more pervasive that it's not only entering our daily life, but also our very intimate and personal lives. It influences, therefore, our nervous systems, which can be consistently be triggered. So the most easy to go relationship would be anxiety, but it can be used for any kind of body type as well, I think.
UX professionals, they follow established design processes, such as design thinking, double diamonds. But how does it work for a Somaesthetic design experience? Do I follow a structured process, or is it more of a free-form approach?
Yes, so this is a very interesting question, I think. Currently, Soma aesthetics would be good to define as an academic, research based orientation, which hasn't established itself its way completely to the commercial world yet. Soma aesthetics right now is more of an artistic exploration, a way of thinking, but also a way of doing that might be a bit different sometimes. So, in the regular process based design processes that we have in UX, we don't get to move our bodies when we are doing a design practice. We sit down and we sketch.
Mm-hmm.
So sketching is a great tool to bring a lot of things to life, which we cannot do through our verbal communication. And I think Somaesthetics is just taking that one step further, which
Mm-hmm.
actually means that you want designers to engage in movement when they are designing for rhythm or designing for movement based practice or designing a gesture even for your mobile device. You want designers to engage in the practice of doing something with their body rather than talking about the gesture or whatever kind of body movement, to let them also understand how does it feel, what actually are the different dimensions that are influencing my gesture, and how does it actually balance with the product that I'm holding or not holding, and how with the sort of backbone technology that is also involved in that.
What is the mindset that a designer need to have in order to start designing for a Somaesthetic experience?
If I look at myself, I have been a teacher for a long time in interaction design, in virtual reality and AR technology projects. Done many of these prototypes with students. That's great to get the basics of spatial interaction. If you are going to transition to Soma aesthetics, it's also inviting yourself into an ambiguous kind of experience of getting to know your own body and then also other people's bodily experiences. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
more intimate and personal experience, which, if you want to contain a kind of bandwidth, because you can also get too intimate, then it's good, for instance, to have movement based practice. Because in movement, if you go to the world of dance, dancers can be very close physically. The
Mm-hmm.
bodies are very close to each other. It doesn't necessarily mean that being as close to each other like that also means a very intimate relationship. So the material language that dancers have has taught me, but also musicians, and musicians are a bit more hesitant to really go on top of each other with the bodies, but they do have to attune to each other when they are playing a performance. So in the dancing, in music, in performative activity, you
Mm-hmm.
see that there's a lot of qualities already existent, and also maybe tools or patterns, whatever we can call it in UX, to already explore actually the material that we want to use in UX, and in particularly UX that might be related with AI technology, because AI technology is about rhythm, is about the time relationship, the time space relationship that we have with the world, because AI is invisible, intangible, but it has a lot of influence on what we do in our daily lives.
I can imagine that designing for a Somaesthetic experience fit with a designer with a certain profile. What is your opinion?
Well, maybe interesting to explain the experience that I had with design students and with the virtual reality students that I've worked with. So 10 years ago, we were working with fashion students and biology and game developers, software engineers. And what I always noticed is that as soon as a design student entered that particular place, the design student waited for his turn instead of just stepping into the game, like really into the game, because there's gameplay involved. The design students would refrain from action, and I had to talk to
Oh.
them in the first few weeks about, no, you don't let go of all your process-based thinking, let go of your tools, throw everything out of the window, just try to explore what exactly you can contribute in this place. And I think that's very interesting to notify that it's not necessarily something that cannot work in a technological environment, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
because what I've learned from software engineers and game developers is that, of course, they don't have like this refined, delicate, sensitive quality towards all the different aspects of Soma aesthetics, but they are not hesitant to try. They just go, and if they are trying, you can see what they're doing, and you, as a teacher, can adapt to that to make them grow and also work their way through it. So, what I really learned in my virtual reality experience is that I don't necessarily, this might be a bit of a strong conclusion, but I don't necessarily need design students to create that type of experience, because I have had a lot of trouble with the design students that I was teaching, that they were hesitant because they were so oriented and focused and used to being positioned on the stage already with their design thinking tools, the double diamond, the 8 steps, but also Figma and whatever kind of
Mm.
I don't know, screen flows, whatever we brought to the table. But as soon as you enter a different type of technology that is more spatial or more intangible, like artificial intelligence is very intangible,
Mm-hmm.
virtual reality is more spatial, also augmented reality is spatial, then it's just changing the game. And the only thing as a designer that you should learn is to step in and try to understand the basic qualities that a designer has and needs to have in order to get whatever kind of design challenge in front of them.
So, modern technology often reflects dominant viewpoints, such as androcentric biases and ableist assumptions. As a researcher, you examine the Soma aesthetic experience through the lenses of feminist philosophy and disability studies. Why is it important to view Soma aesthetic experience through these particular frameworks?
So, for me, in the basic sense of thinking, Soma aesthetics is about getting your human experience back to this enriching, sensitive, exploratory space from which we were. And the lenses of feminist philosophy and disability studies, I use them to explore the lives or the lived experience of people with disabilities, not because they are necessarily disabled, but because there's challenge and adventure in it, and it's a great place to just explore alternative viewpoints. Um, and the feminist philosophy is just providing a way of thinking that focuses on this sensing part, but also is starting from equity or in a kind of communal way of working
Mm-hmm.
towards design.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, for me, when I started the project, I didn't really want to focus on those words: disability studies, feminist philosophy. I mean, it's such a politicized environment right now, but for me, it's mainly going back to how I grew up with my father in a wheelchair and focusing on that part of being disabled that is fun, that is enriching, that is musical. So for me, it's not about I'm going for disability studies or feminist philosophy necessarily, but it's just somehow how the world is organized. But I just go back to my own lived experience with those 27 years of living with a person in a wheelchair that is whose health is deteriorating. But it's also fun. It's not only difficult. There is difficult and there's challenges, but there's also a part that you're missing as soon as that gets out of your life. And that's the disruptive part, maybe the fragmented getting your life in order, but what order you never know. So you have to live continuously with things you don't expect and then adapt to that not expected scenario that you're suddenly in with. And that's what I think, that's why I use feminist philosophy and disability studies, because they provide that sort of backbone.
You tap very much into your personal experiences. You're talking about your father, you're talking about disabled people that you interact with. But let's say that your empathy levels are very low. Can you still engage in a Soma aesthetic design experience?
Well, how I look at it in my own research development, so I don't necessarily only use the word soma aesthetic. I think there's just different ways of working with the sort of approach and material. If you are like a high-end software engineer, uh, they are just not into it, and that's not a problem. I mean, if I look at, especially maybe my experience of 10 years of being in virtuality projects with interdisciplinary groups of students, has taught me that you can step in anytime you want. But what is necessary if you step in, that both as the person, if you are a creative director or a teacher, then it doesn't really matter what kind of role you play in that one, but you need to focus on the qualities that every person brings in. So if you have very high end functional qualities of getting some sort of machine learning system really delicate and with very good coding, then of course that's something that's going to contribute immediately to the human experience as well. And that's what I have seen in students, that they can be very very technical, and I don't think that students who are very much into low empathy levels and just have different interests need to be forced to move into this very personalized intimate space. It's more about the whole design space needs to have that soma aesthetic quality. It's not necessary that every practitioner of that space needs to be fully into soma aesthetic, dancing together and moving. No, it's really about there need to be enough people in that group to hold the soma aesthetic quality. And I'm not even sure if that needs to be a creative director, like one person. It can also be like a few. From that point of view, it's a very democratized kind of process, you could say. And then even the person who's very technical or very not necessarily technical and low empathy are like always the related. But what I have seen that you can still join the club if you just bring in your own qualities, and then from that sense it's more about taking ownership of everything that you have and do,
Sure.
and getting the practitioners to understand themselves a bit better, and also providing the space for boundaries. So
Mm.
stepping in is the most important, and then slowly evolving towards what needs to be done.
It's a great way to end this podcast. Anne Marleen Olthof, thank you so much. But before we go, could you give me your top 3 books you would recommend?
I think a good book by Paul Dorish, it's called Where the Action Is,
Hmm.
and he discusses the foundations of embodied interaction. And this book has been referenced quite a lot because it's writing very delicately about the transitioning from interaction towards embodied interaction. And then the second book, which is written by Christine Hook, Designing with the Body. And she has really been one of the main influencers in the somatic turn in human computer interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe for the last ones, that's about disability by Margaret Shildrick. So
Uh-huh.
this is more about dangerous discourses of disability, subjectivity, and sexuality by Margaret Shildrick. And she is a feminist philosopher, but for people who are like to read about disability can step into her work.
Anne Marleen, thank you so much for the recommendations. And if you listeners have any questions or things that you would like to share, leave your comments. And again, Anne Marleen, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Robert. Really nice. Thank you.